doing an event like that, it encapsulates kind of everything you need to be able to do to live a active, healthy, quality life, right? I mean, so it doesn't have to be the Tour de France, and it doesn't have to be a goal, right? It could be just being able to roll around on the floor with your grandkids as you get older, which could, just things like that.
All right. Hey, everyone. John Heringer here, Chief Motivator over at Method3 Fitness. Welcome to another episode of the Stronger for Today show, where we bring you the stories, the science, and the strategies to help you, the older adult, improve the way you eat, move, and think so you can achieve your goals and live stronger for today. I'm joined today in this episode with Mr. George Karabatsos. George is a longtime partner in Method3. How many years now, George?
I think I'm just hitting 13 this month, as a matter of fact.
Wow, man, that is incredible.
I'm one of the
Holy
old guard
smokes.
in more ways than one.
Yeah, well, hey, and for those the people that don't know, I mean, Method3 is only 15 years old. So you've been here pretty much since the beginning, which is rad.
Yeah.
So George is a partner at Method3, fitness enthusiast, cyclist, and I'll let him share more about these different things. And so we're gonna dive in. I think one of the things I was just sharing, prior to this call here with you, George, was a memory is that some number of years ago, you actually, speaking of cycling, you went to some bike tour thing and completed like various portions of the Tour de France. Yes?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you share more about that? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that was in 2019. So it was a little bit just pre-COVID, and it turned out the tour, for those of you that maybe don't follow cycling, it's one of the grand tours. And so it's a 21 stage or 23 day tour, and it goes all over Europe and mostly France. And so, I had an opportunity to ride 10 of those 21 stages. And I rode mostly just the mountainous stages. So 5 stages in the Alps, 5 stages in the Pyrenees, and then another iconic climb called Mont Ventoux, which, if you're a golfer, it's Pebble Beach of golfing. It's it's
Love
the
it.
Indianapolis 500 of speed racing. It's whatever, right? It's an iconic. And so, yeah, I had a chance to do that. And, of course, doing that was an amazing, it's an amazing adventure. I mean, because the people you meet, the food you get to eat. And for us, it was cool because we did it the day of the event. We did one big climb in Spain in the Pyrenees, and it's called the Tourmalet. And as we climbed the Tourmalet, it's about a 28, 30 kilometer climb. It's about 18 miles, and it's just up and up and up, and you just grind it out. And there were literally, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, John, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people there because they were waiting for the real cyclists to come through instead of just us knuckleheads that were going through doing it. So, super exhilarating, just the fun of it, the accomplishment.
What an experience. Yeah.
It was a great experience. And I've done a couple of those sorts of things, but probably the real fun, and I mean, is in a sick sort of way, is the preparation, right? So, because you don't just do it, right? You don't just walk out there. It's like if you were going to do Hamlet, you don't just walk on stage and have a script in front of your hand and or in front of your face and kind of decide, whether it's noble or
I'm going to go act today. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you have to prep.
Yeah,
you have to prep for it, and you have to prepare mentally, physically. Clean, of course, involves your weight is always a concern as well. So you tend to want to drop weight and do things. So you pay a lot of attention to everything from your heart rate to your lean muscle mass to hydration, blah, blah, blah. So it encapsulates, really, doing an event like that. It encapsulates kind of everything you need to be able to do to live a active, healthy,
fit life.
Life, right? I mean, so it doesn't have to be the Tour de France, and it doesn't have to be
right,
giant goal, right? It could be just being able to roll around on the floor with your grandkids as you get older, which could, just things like that.
And that's the thing is, I think and seeing it through that lens is important. For those of you that don't know, George is 70 years young this year. Which means you were rocking that thing when you were what, 4 then?
Yeah,
thereabouts?
about 7 years, 63, 64, something like that. Yeah, 63.
Yeah. So just to give people some context, right? It's not like, oh, hey, yeah, I remember doing that. It was back when I was like 35. It's like, nope, you're doing that in your early to mid 60s. So, like you said, lots of preparation that needs to take place for that. But let's let's back up because I think you're right for some people, and I appreciate the context and perspective of it doesn't have to be I'm going to go, hit some of the stages at the tour over in
Right.
France and Spain, right? It could be I just want to be able to do this better, play with my grandkids and actually get to and from the floor easily without pain, right? And I think that's very important. I think for a lot of people it's for not to sound corny cliche, but like finding a little bit of their why, right? Like finding what it is that's really like driving them
Right.
to want to do something about this because, inertia is real and sometimes it's really really hard to just take that first step even if I'm telling myself I really want it because of X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
So let's back up quite a number of years and just tell people about because I think for a lot of people, right, even at Method 3, right, they see George, this crazy fit 70-year-old that's doing like 180 hops off the Bosu just for fun.
It's my inner. It's my,
And then, yeah, it is your inner Keith. I love it, channeling. But I think, you know, for a lot of for anyone, sometimes as they meet you, they think, oh, this is the way George has always been.
yeah.
Right. This is like he's always just been this crazy fit, active guy, so kind of back up and share with us like what is your journey to health and fitness and wellness and being in a spot where you're at now, which is this beautiful, I guess symmetry, congruency, relationship with health, wellness, cycling, all these things, how it
Yeah.
factors in
Balance.
to be just it's a part of you. It's a part of you now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So start at the beginning. Hit us
sure,
up.
sure. Without going too far back,
Sure.
that Mesozoic period, which I think I was part of it. But it's funny how I mean, and I'm not trying to preach or anything, and I think most people will kind of agree if you really think about it that almost at least in my life, I can speak for myself. The most goodness of just about anything I've ever done kind of comes out of adversity. It kind of comes out of
Mm,
bad times, and for me, it started with a really bad chronic lower back. And I was 50 years old before I ever got on a bike. I mean, on a competitive basis.
yeah.
And
Wow.
so, yeah. So, I mean, I started this very late. I didn't start as a teen or anything like that. So I haven't been doing it really that long, 20 years. I know it's a long time, but when you're,
Mm,
my age and, it was a means to an end. I had really problems with my back. I was doing various different things. And two things happened. My son turned me on to my eldest son, who's a great rider, and I ride with him to this day, which is also kind of cool because at my age, I can still do active stuff with my kids. In fact,
yep.
I can outdo some of my kids,
Yeah.
which I take great pride in.
Yes.
But it also, it was riding, and then it was my daughter who was working at Almaden Valley Athletic Club, which
Hmm.
most people I think around here know that. And and I was going to AVAC and just kind of doing normal, lifting weights and doing stuff and blah blah blah, and not feeling good about it. And she suggested I take a class from this guy named Keith Lucette, who did this
Yeah.
funny class called TRX. Never heard of it. And of course, it was just a different way of doing things. And I tried to use TRX to kind of balance out my fitness, and everything kind of grew from there. I mean, then as you start to become more fit, then you start to want to eat a little bit better. It's kind of a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And so I started to make those changes out of necessity because I couldn't do some of the stuff I used to do. I used to run a bit. I never really enjoyed running, if I was honest with myself, but I did it just to try and maintain some level of fitness. And,
Mm.
and so I started doing TRX and then ended up following Keith to FAT before it was
Yes,
method.
to fast action training at the time. Yes, of course.
And so then kind of the rest is history. But I think I think the two key takeaways really in my view is sometimes the best things come out of adversity, right?
Hmm.
I've always found, particularly because I coached youth soccer and coached at Valley Christian and in the area here, and I always told my girls because I always coach girls, that I learned more as a coach from a loss than I ever did from a victory. I always learned what to improve and how to make things better and what we needed to work on. So so there was that, and then the other thing I've learned too, and that I would just again, not trying to preach, but just throw it out there, that sometimes when you start a new path or when you start a new direction, whether it be fitness or better nutrition or a combination thereof or whatever it is, it's daunting, right? Because it's a big change,
Yes.
and I always think back to what one of my first sales bosses told me, and he said, "You know how to eat an elephant, don't you?" And I said, "No." He said, "One bite at a time."
Yeah.
So because you try and do more than that, you choke, right? So you just, and then another quote I would use is the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And again,
Yeah.
cliche, but they're kind of true. And if
Totally.
you just take that first step, then the next day you take the second step, and the next day you take and all of a sudden you look up, and you're down the road several months, several weeks, you're getting cool results. And now you've just changed the habit. And that's what happened to me anyway. And so
Yeah.
now going back is not even an alternative. But you're
Yeah.
right. To your earlier point, and pictures don't lie. And I see pictures of myself 20 some odd years ago, before I started cycling, before I started getting active with various different types of fitness. And man, I didn't look good.
Sure. Yeah.
I didn't. In fact, I've shown pictures of people that haven't. In fact, I think I might have shown you one time long, long ago. I probably don't remember,
Yeah.
but a picture of me, and you can, and I've had people literally go, "That it's not you."
Yeah. Right.
I know it doesn't look like me, but that was me. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, tons of good stuff has come out of it. I mean, it's kind of. I mean, it's not only a change of lifestyle. It's kind of become my identity. I mean, I have to say,
So
so.
so tell me, yeah, so tell us about that, because I think, like you said, people are doing double takes and can't believe that, like, you've made this significant transformation. I'd love to know, besides, it sounds like obviously there was a certain amount of weight and body fat loss that you have shed over those years. What were some of the other benefits that you derived? Like, just number them off that you feel like, man, since embracing this lifestyle,
Yeah.
sure, I looked better because I dropped some weight. And tell me what you've experienced that you feel that you're aware of.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of everything. I mean, it's just day to day stuff. I mean, I can. I'm looking out in my yard here. I can go out in the yard and do a little bit of yard work if I want. I mean, it sounds silly, but we've got our backyard's kind of terraced, and so it's got 2-3 foot walls.
Yep.
2.5 foot walls and so forth. And there was a time where I would walk around and go down a step to come down, rather than just jump off the wall. And I can just jump off the wall, and I don't even have to think about it.
Wow.
I can roll around. I have 4 grandchildren, ranging in age now from 5 to, gosh, 13. I can. I remember one time when they were younger, and my father-in-law was here, and I was down on the floor, and they were crawling all over me, and we were back and forth and this and that. Actually, it was my brother-in-law, who's about my same age. And it was around Thanksgiving, and I was rolling around the floor with them for half an hour or something, like back and forth. And my brother-in-law goes, "Hey, I don't know how you do that, because I don't physically." He goes, "I couldn't do that. I could not do what you just did."
Mm,
He goes, "And I got tired just watching you." He said.
right.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of everything. You just I I just, I walk a little differently. It changes your attitude too. And, I mean, and it's not just ego, but that's some of it.
Yeah.
You tend to stand up a little more upright. You tend to perk your shoulders back a little bit more. And
Sure.
you just feel better. You feel more positive. You
Yeah.
feel more that there are very few things physically that you can't do. And that
Mm,
unlocks a lot of things mentally. And so,
absolutely.
so
So many things you said right there, that I want to unpack a little bit of there, but I think it's, um, as you've embraced this fitness as a lifestyle, right? And it sounds like you said through adversity. So you had started at this time where you felt like it was almost your lowest of low, a lot of back pain, can't do much, running kind of, but not really because it hurts and you're not a huge fan of it. And you just happen to kind of get into TRX and then just slowly start biting
yeah,
off a little bit more. And then your son gets you into cycling and that's a little bit more. So it was this slow layered approach, but you also just kept trying to figure out what you could do, right? So you weren't letting limitation get in the way of forward progress, right?
yeah,
And I think that's an important thing to note, because no matter if you're 50, 70, or 30, it doesn't really matter. There's injuries throughout life, right? Always.
yeah,
And that's injuries, illness, and unfortunately for many people that can be the thing that just knocks them off the horse and they never get back on.
Yeah.
And, it takes someone, hopefully in life, your daughter, for example, that's like, hey, try this class over here, right? But some kind of, there's internal motivation that we obviously need, and some semblance of like a desire to move forward to improve our own well-being that's important. But there's also just having the right people in your life, in your corner, and then having the courage to take that step forward and go, I'm just going to do what I can do. It's not
Yeah.
going to be perfect. It's not going to be like, I'm not running a marathon out of the gate. I'm just going to do one thing. Like you said, a journey begins with a single step. And then you just kept adding not just steps, but you kept adding layers, right? You added TRX, you added cycling, you then added certain challenges within that. And I think it's just really important for people to hear because, you could have said, this limitation defines me, and I'm just gonna hang it up. Right? And so, it sounds like, I know you and you probably would never do that anyway. It's just not the type of person you are. But there's so many people out there that do. And
Yeah.
they just think for whatever reason, whether it's I feel guilty exercising, I can't prioritize it, I don't know how to do it, I'm scared of doing it, I failed doing it, I'm defined by my injury, whatever it is,
Yeah.
but they almost immerse themselves in this identity and they never give themselves even the option of just taking that single step. So first off, kudos for taking the first step and then a bajillion more thereafter to get to where you are now. And I love how you also elucidated the benefits that you've derived, not just from a like, oh, I'm better at cycling, right? It's like you looked over and you're like, oh, you know what? I actually go outside and do my yard work whenever I want. I'm not winded. I don't like have a fear of doing it, right? You're like, oh yeah, my backyard terrace. Like I just jumped down. I mean, again, most people listening to this are probably understanding of what that means, but that's a plyometric. Specifically when you're coming down, that's a depth jump. That's hard on joints. But you've been training and facilitating, keeping your body like mobile, elastic, those muscles used to things like this. And so your body can withstand, that type of,
Yeah.
force and compression and things like that. And it then yields itself to not just being able to do that overall, but to be able to like get down up off the ground, to be able to step up and do certain things, provide the power output that you need to cycle. All these things translate to so many other factors within your life, right? And some of the most gratifying ones, like I can get down on the floor and kind of tussle and play with any of my grandkids whenever I want. What an amazing feeling at 70 years young, right? When unfortunately, I can say that there's many 70-year-olds out there that can't say that, right? You're already in a top X percent to be able to be there. I love it. George, what do you think as you went along that journey and you kept taking little steps right forward to your X, you got introduced to fast action training, which was before we became Method3 Fitness. We were fast action, get fit with FAT. Everyone loved it. Acronym could have been better. We improved on that, thankfully. Then you started engaging in cycling. How did your mindset shift? Because like you said, you'd kind of dabbled, but you hadn't really embraced health and this whole healthy fitness lifestyle until 50, right? Until you said you had some of this adversity. But then you also could have easily just said, I got a taste of it for 3 to 6 months. I'm good. And
Yeah.
just bowed out. You didn't. You kept going. How did you do that? How did your mindset shift? What kept you going? Because I know in your history, every now and then you've had that little low back kind of talk to you, right? And say,
Back surgery two
you know,
years ago.
so yeah, so tell me about that because at
Right.
any point in time you could have stopped, but you
Yeah.
didn't. You had that surgery. You could have stopped. You didn't. So tell me how you kind of, I guess, kind of doubled down or grew like your intrinsic motivation and your ability to say like, no,
Yeah.
this is just a part of me. Surgery or no, I'm going to come back and start getting after it again.
Some of it's just sort of how I'm wired. I mean, I have to say. I
Yep.
mean, I just that's some of it. I mean, that not all of it.
Yeah.
That's just some of it. And with cycling specifically, I just wanted to get better. And your ego. I'm just being open and honest. My ego played into it because it turns out there are elements of cycling, like there's sprinting, there's climbing, there's various different elements. I know for most people, they go, you just get on a bike and ride. And fundamentally, that's true. But,
Yeah.
but there are nuances, like with anything, there are nuances to it. And it turns out I was kind of a good climber. I was just good in the hills. And my buddies would, we'd start off on a climb and all of a sudden, they'd be behind me and I'd be going up and I'd get a lot of positive stuff. And then, so from that, I was kind of like, oh, that's good positive reinforcement, right? Positive reinforcement works. I mean, it works with, come on,
Yes.
3-year-olds,
Yes.
give them an M&M and they'll do something, I mean, come on,
Yeah.
just work. Maybe not M&M, give them a carrot chip. I don't know, whatever.
There you
Um,
go.
and so it was just trying to get better. There's a American cyclist named Greg LeMond, who won the tour back in the early '90s. He was pre-Lance Armstrong guy. And he said it never is cycling. He said it never gets easier. You just get faster. So you're never looking to just get to a point where you're satisfied, where, okay, that's
Mm,
enough. It's like, how do you get better? How do you get better? And I use Method 3 to do that. I use Method 3.
mm,
And what I found was one of the things that was an impediment to my cycling, a real impediment to my um, climbing, was my lower back, because my lower back
mm.
would start to go on me in these long climbs, these 18, 20,
Sure.
25-kilometer climbs. So what I found was, working on my core, which Method 3 helped a lot, was really helped do that. So I just bought in. So that's why I go. That's part of why I go. I try and go at least 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes 6 times a week,
I
sometimes
know.
just a
I
couple
know.
times a
Yeah.
day.
Love it. Love
But
it.
when I can, and I have to kind of back off sometimes, because I can over rotate, as I'm, but I'll go back to something you mentioned a bit earlier, not to go too far back, but it does play into this discussion, and that is, I think people just naturally, there are roadblocks in life. Some of them are physical, like you mentioned earlier. Like with me, it happened to be my back. For somebody else, it might be
Hmm.
bad knee. It might be this. It might be that. And those are things, but then those roadblocks are not always physical. A lot of times they're mental. I
Right.
see this with athletes, and I saw this with coaching, and I see it with myself, where it's easy to put up roadblocks that aren't there. It's easy to find excuses and reasons why you can't do something. And so I
Yeah.
always try and just turn it around into, how can we do something? And I'm not trying to get this a sales pitch for Method 3, but this is true, where, especially when, because it's cool, because all the trainers know me well enough that, well, they'll see I'll come in, and I'll have a little hitch in my get along, and they'll know, it's your back, or is it this or that? And the key here is, when we're doing something, they never say, if we're doing a particular thing that I know is going to hurt my back, let's say, as an example, they never say, don't do that. What they say is,
Right.
let's modify it. Let's do a workaround, right? So the back could have been an impediment, right? I could have just said, gonna have to sit today, can't do it. And they go, no, we can do it. We'll just do it differently, so you don't hurt yourself.
Hmm.
So that is, and that's a specific example at Method 3. But in terms of continuing on that journey,
Right.
I think, in a broad context, you have to eliminate, you have to develop workarounds for the physical roadblocks. You have to develop
Yeah.
mental toughness for the psychological roadblocks that you naturally put up yourself. You naturally, because,
Yeah.
anyway, I won't go too
So
far on
you
that.
mentioned, yeah. So let me, no, I think that's totally true. Yeah. Yeah. We do put up roadblocks, and it's very easy if you can't do something, instead of trying to find like, hey, let's try to find a way, nope, not going to work. Right. That's
Mhm.
it. Can't do it. Can't do it because of X, Y, or Z. So let's go back to that. You just had back surgery, you said 2 years ago.
The second one is,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
A second one. Great. Okay. So
yeah,
this is your second surgery on it. And I'm sure there's a certain amount of time off you had to take, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So a lot of times, right, just it's gonna happen. If we have to take a certain amount of time off,
yeah,
we're not gonna lose all of it, but we're gonna
yeah,
lose a little something, right? Because that's what, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so unfortunately, with a surgery, it will necessitate rest to reduce inflammation or just promote healing, things like that, that need to take place, right?
right,
Just like a bone has to heal, can't go use it, right? But it can make coming back from that more challenging. You mentioned the ego. It can damage our ego because I used to be here
right.
and now I got to come back in here.
Age
So
does that too.
there you go. So how did you deal with that post surgery? How did you manage to say, again, and I bring this up because for so many, yes, you're wired differently. We're all wired in our own unique ways. However, you also weren't like 40 having
Yeah,
that surgery.
yeah,
You were in your, late 60s having that surgery. And
yeah,
it's so much easier at that point to say, like, man, this is my second surgery now. You know what? I'm hanging up the helmet here, hanging up the
Yeah.
bike, right? I mean, there's so many things that could happen, and yet you didn't even let that come into your mind. So I'd love to know post surgery, you got a certain amount of like the doctor's like, you got to rest for this much, George. Then you're coming back into it with exercise. So what was the mindset of like, was there even a thought, I'm gonna not do any fitness here? When you did get back into it, how did you give yourself some grace so that you weren't expecting to be like performing at the level you were prior to surgery, right?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, part of it, I guess part of it is, for me, well, so the first an answer, short answer to your question was, it never even crossed my mind that I wouldn't go right back. I mean,
Yeah.
that was built in my plan right from the jump, right from the doctor. I was
Right.
back. Well, I'm having something right now that I'm talking about, but something different. And my first thing was, okay, tell me about the procedure, tell me about the thing, and how long before I'm back on the bike, how long before I'm back in the gym. And so that was kind of just built into the whole. That was
Right.
part of my recovery process, right? It
Right.
was didn't look at it independently. That was just it was a package deal, right?
Yeah.
It's kinda like my poor wife of 47 years. 47 years.
Awesome.
And I know that's pretty awesome, actually. That to me is way more impressive than any of the
That's
other ones.
wild. Yeah.
But, she got the good with it. She got the good with the bad, and yeah, unfortunately for her, it's a whole lot more bad than good. But
Yeah.
but but all kidding aside, you get a person, anyway, I looked at that whole, "I'm gonna get my back fixed," and, part of what motivated me to get my back fixed was, A, I started being in pain, pain sucks, and
Yeah.
I wanted to get back to doing what I wanted to do, which was be in the gym and be on the bike. So,
Mm.
that was kind of the whole package. So I never even, honest to God, John, I never even. It's funny. The first time you mentioned it just now, it's the first time I ever even thought about it, that I would like stop.
Yeah.
I mean, and so
So how
so I
did you give yourself the grace though of like, okay, so it never enters your head. And I love how
yeah,
you thought about it. I want
we'll
I
go
want
with
to hear
that.
people entertain that of, when they do have to go in for a surgery or something, it's not just taking it as like, well, that's it. And then, sometimes I think we can hear what we want to hear at times if it's like, oh, you have to rest, you have to do this, that there's no questioning certain things. And movement, I mean, I believe movement is medicine, right? So like the quicker we can get back up on the horse and moving and moving our bodies the way we need to, it doesn't mean we have to be like, hey, 6 week post op, I'm PRing what I was before, but we have to get back at it to be able to relish in those benefits. So you didn't even give it a thought. You just kind of like that was part of the package. That was part of my rehab gym. When can I get back in? Like that was which I love. Now, how did you though? Because there is some semblance of ego that comes into place, I think, for men and women to a degree, depending on the individual and how we're wired, to have the humility and the determination to still say, okay, I'm coming in from a surgery. I'm not going to go try to like crush this 25-mile X thousand feet of climbing
Yeah,
out of the gate. I'm going to
yeah,
give myself some grace. I'm going to work up to that. I'm okay with that.
yeah.
How did you reconcile that? Because like you said, there is this ego of like, well, I used to be here. Gosh dang it. Now the surgery. And sometimes that can be the demise of people where they go, well, that's where I was. You know what? Screw it. And they again, another reason for them to hang it up. We're very people are very it's very easy for us as individuals sometimes, some more than others, to be able to just have a reason
Yeah.
to let something go because it's going to be hard, right?
Yeah. I think the true answer to that really was just setting short term goals,
Mm,
because I had a pretty good, I know rough and tough when I'm out of the saddle for X amount of time, I know how much time it's going to take me to get back. And so, just setting up those goals and saying, hey, I should be at this interval by this point, and just working into those goals, and kind of back to something I said earlier, just trying to take the big thing and break it into small, digestible, manageable parts. Because
yes.
like anything, whether it's fitness or life in general, it can get overwhelming at times, and you can just have this wall just overcome
Yeah.
you. And so for me, I just sort of broke it down, into what I wanted to attain, where I wanted to get. And so, yeah, it was really just like I say, breaking it down into those small digestible chunks. And believe me, there were days where, I would come home and I'd just go, "Ah," I'd come home from a ride, once I was started riding again, and I
Yeah.
was riding within 8 weeks. I was back on the bike. Oh no, I was sort of about 4 weeks. No, I wasn't doing crazy stuff, but I'd come back and my wife go, how'd it go? Time wasn't good. This, and I could have been faster on the thing. And normally I
Yeah.
hit the pace. And she goes, yeah, but did you have fun? Did you enjoy being on the bike? I was like, yeah, I did. So
Good.
having that support, wherever it comes from, a spouse, a
Yep.
friend, a trainer, or somebody, a
Yeah.
doctor,
Training partner.
or
Yeah.
whatever it is, having somebody kind of help you with those goals and then call bullshit on you sometimes, pardon my French,
Yeah.
but so, if and before you start having a pity party, just kind of saying, hey, suck it up. You were on the bike, you were out there, you did your best today. That's got to be good enough. So shut up and do better tomorrow. So it's like, well, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's great. Some things as I've been, connecting with other partners is just there's a lot of common themes of just making sure that there's different support structures that come in whatever
Yeah.
shape or form, like you said,
Holding
spouse,
yourself
coach, trainer,
accountable.
training partner. Yeah.
Being
Yeah,
held
exactly.
accountable. That's I mean, people, that's one of my main pet peeves is, it's okay to mess up. It's okay to
Yep.
you screw up. It's okay to make mistakes. It's all that stuff. My grandfather always said, he said, people understand when you make a mistake. He said, but I'll tell you one thing. He said, once is a mistake, twice is stupidity. If you're going to keep
Yeah.
repeating the same thing, now you're just stupid. And nobody puts up with
Right.
being
Yeah.
stupid. People understand when you make
Right.
a mistake. But when you do make a mistake, own up to it, and own up to it to
Yep.
yourself, to say,
Yeah.
yeah, I could have gotten out of bed. I could have gone, but I decided to have an extra cup of coffee and not go to the gym today. And it's like, all right, just own up to it and move on and then go tomorrow.
Exactly.
Just go,
Totally. And I think that's important. I think it's like, owning whatever decision you make and knowing where that puts you in relationship to the goal that you set is important. Right.
yeah,
And so if you're going to give yourself the grace and flexibility to stay in bed and have that extra cup of coffee or hang out and read the paper or connect with a spouse or your kids, great. Right. Own that decision and ensure that it doesn't derail you from having all of a sudden a waterfall of
yeah,
future days that are exactly the same. Because now it's not the coffee. Now it was the rain. I don't want to
right,
go out in the weather. Not good,
yeah,
right? So there's always some different reasons. So I agree. There does have to be some semblance of accountability. But I really love what you said because I think a lot of people um, have had various little injuries, and that the idea behind staying present enough to have those short term goals and just focusing on that, right? And knowing that, like, okay, I'm going to try to hit this, and then I can move forward from there. It doesn't have to be not dwelling too much in the past of like, oh, well, I used to be here.
yeah,
Like you said, like sometimes we'll still lament my time used to be this, and it's like, well, but did you have fun? And are you taking action? You're out on the bike. You're doing this, right? And so I think it's important to try to in conjunction with setting those goals, remembering to count the wins,
yeah.
right? I mean, here you are, 70 years young, still on the bike, still rocking 4 to 5 to 6 workouts a week. So let me ask you this, George, kind of in closing here. What does the next 10 years look like for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about that today. I was on the bike. I got
Yep.
45 in today,
Nice.
and yeah, it's kind of cold and nasty. But anyway, and that is it. Yeah, I know exactly. I the answer to that question is I've set a goal for myself to move everything by 10. So in other words, I want to be at 80 doing what I thought I could do at 70 because now that I'm 70, I'm doing what I thought I could only do at 60. So, now, I may slow down a little bit, but you set the goal, you have a standard, and you might have to modify it a little bit. I mean, things do physically erode at some point. I mean, Father
Yep.
Time catches up
Yep.
with us all. I mean, but
Yeah.
I've read so much and some stuff I've shared with you of late too that there's so much that we can do. Just, I was listening to a podcast the other day and there was this Aussie and he was talking about fitness performance for elite level athletes and their lactic thresholds and all this technical
Yeah.
jargon. He stopped himself in the middle of it. He said, "But you know what?" He said, "Here's the thing." He says, "Especially as you get a little older, try and get good quality sleep, eat well, clean up your diet, and move. You do those three things,
Yeah.
you're gonna be okay."
Yeah. Right. You're probably going to live a pretty good life. Yeah.
It's kind of it,
Yeah.
guys. Because what's the
100%.
end? What's the end? But just staying in tune, staying in tune with my body. You know, oh, and I'm my worst enemy on this. I always, when I coached, particularly, they couldn't understand was the difference between pain and injury. And what I always
Mm,
said to them is, as an athlete, as a person, sometimes you have to do stuff through pain. You have to work through pain. You just have to.
right.
You can't work through an injury, though. You
Yep.
got to know your body a little bit. And so as you
Totally.
push yourself, as I push myself, I'm trying to, I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to adhere to my own advice. It's kind of like
Yeah, sure. To
the
listen to
cobbler's
that. Yeah.
children have no shoes, right?
Yep.
Easy to give advice. It's hard to live it. But yeah, that's really my goal. Is I want to be in 10 years. I fully expect, barring anything weird, to be on the bike. I fully expect to be in the gym. I fully
Love
expect
it.
to be rolling around with my grandchildren. Although they'll be bigger, maybe they'll be rolling me around. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no,
Awesome.
yeah, and I just see being active. And then the last thing I would say, just, and this is not necessarily just aging, but one of the epiphanies I've had over the last year or two, and I preach this to my wife all the time, um, is that you have to stay current. You have to stay current. You have to stay
Yeah.
current in your eating. You have to stay current in your exercise. You have to stay current in how you dress, the
Yep.
music you listen to, I'm not going to listen to AI because I heard it was a bad thing. Get
Yeah.
over it, dude. It's here.
Yep.
You better embrace
Yeah.
it. And you're either, and this in running a small business, as does my daughter, you're either moving ahead or you're falling behind. You can't stay in the same.
Right. Yep.
There's no in between. It's, you're moving ahead or you're falling behind. So,
Well, I love
you know,
that though. So I think, like you said though, it's maintaining fluidity. Got to stay fluid.
yeah,
So I
I had a
love
great
that.
boss.
10 years from now, still rocking the bike, still rocking your workouts, staying current, staying fluid, and still continuing to enjoy everything you want to in life. I think that's the biggest, takeaway I really want people to understand is like, when you do all these things, sometimes it sounds like, when you hear George's regimen, some people listening may be like, holy crap, how does this guy doing all this? But like in essence, it's creating this freedom at the same time, right?
Yeah.
To do what you want to do in life, to go enjoy different experiences and
I,
travel and this
I'm
and like
spending a ton of
grandkids.
time in the last year and a half. I didn't even talk about this, John. I'm hiking now 18 to 20 miles a week with my dog. And I don't
Wow.
do it for fitness. I do it because I just love being outdoors. And I love being with my
Yeah.
dog. She's just like my
Yeah.
best friend. And so that it's allowed me to do that. I don't know that I could have really started hiking at this age the way I'm doing it if I didn't have that base, right, to be able to go do it.
Yeah.
So it's a
Love
means
it.
to an end. This is all a
Yep.
means to an end.
That's it. That's what it's all about. Well, hey, George, I appreciate the conversation today, sir. It's always a pleasure.
Same here.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank
And
you.
thanks for joining me on the show.
All right. Love you, brother.
All right. Take it easy.
Take care.